Mel, 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 everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everyone, Cantonese Cat here. I do these videos about once a month or so talking about whether or not I think Bitcoin has topped for the cycle. And there are 10 reasons as to why I think that it hasn't topped yet. I'm going to go for each one of them individually, and they're not in any particular order. But the first one is just simply a very, very simple thing. It's just because it formed a higher high. And whenever things form a higher high, you automatically just assume that it's in a bull trend. In a bull trend, the trend's going to continue until it doesn't, right? Until it starts showing some signs of exhaustion. And right now it's very simple. It kind of hit the higher high right here. It's trying to backtest some of the levels down underneath over here on the previous tops from the last cycle, which is completely normal behavior. Like any asset, any stocks, any crypto, if they break out above to have a little bit of a backtest on the previous high, is actually quite normal behavior. So right now there's nothing really to be alarmed about. And if you also look at the volume shelves over here, right now we're at a pretty important volume shelf. We just kind of bounced off of the 58,000 level. If we end up going down further, which I'm not sure if we necessarily have to, but if we end up going down further, there's a pretty good volume shelf right around 52,000, which should be like the next support level. 48,000 would be the next one, and then the next one would be around like 44, 40, so on and so forth. But right now we're actually at a pretty decent volume shelf over here. We bounce off of around 58,000. So there's a possibility, I think there's a strong possibility where we might end up bottoming over here to go up. Although if it goes down further, the bull trend would still be intact, because right now it's just forming a higher high. It's trying to form a higher low, and it doesn't really matter in terms of where the higher low is located. It would still be technically a bull trend. Right. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, if you pull up the Black Hat L3 Banker Fund Flow Trend Oscillator, to just kind of zoom out here a little bit and try to see whether or not the whale fund flow, now these are supposed to be showing you data in terms of inflow and outflow and present in a way that is a trend oscillator. So these are not absolute numbers in terms of whether or not the whales are buying or selling or having inflow or outflow. These are just kind of basically showing you a trend, right? So whenever you see that there's a trend of these kind of green candles here for about 6-7 months or so, usually you're probably about, I would say probably about maybe halfway through the bull market, with a very, very potentially very strong push to come afterwards. And we've just kind of gone through that previously. When you get to up to this point, which is I think maybe a little bit more equivalent to this point over here, you have a pretty parabolic move that has yet to come, right? And then if you go back to the cycle before that, you're talking about having about 6 of these kind of green inflow candles. We're talking about maybe somewhere around here, right? There's still about a whole year and a little bit more of this bull trend left, and we went up a lot higher after that. So I wonder whether or not we're at the very same spot over here compared over there, and there's really not any signs for having any outflow. As things kind of get up there, people start to have a little bit of an outflow, right? We're not really seeing that so far. So the trend oscillator in terms of whale fund flow going in is still relatively strong. So number three, I'm going to close up over here. Number three is going to be Bollinger Band. The Bollinger Band for the monthly is going to tell you a lot, actually. The Bollinger Band for the monthly is going to tell you whether or not the trend is just gone way too far, way too fast, and it's getting exhausted. And when you see things that are just kind of closing up about the upper Bollinger Band for a very, very long time without taking a break and getting back underneath the Bollinger Band to try and cool down, usually that signifies that you have a very, very strong trend exhaustion, right? So for example, right now, we have about 2 green candles here, and then one kind of going sideways here, and 2 green candles over here. Like these couple of candles over here, this one closed above the upper Bollinger Band, this one closed right at the upper Bollinger Band, right? Cool down, much necessary for continuation of a higher bull trend. This over here, 2 candles closing right above the upper Bollinger Band, a little bit way too far, way too fast. The Bollinger Band expanding, so it's going to allow price to go up a lot higher over time, but it needed to cool down. So we ended up having, in the month of April, having a candle close inside the Bollinger Band. And so far, we're beginning the month of May as well. So we're about a third of the way through it right now, and it's still inside the Bollinger Band. So it's actually a pretty decent, healthy cool down. Not like this. If you have like half a year candle, bam, 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 like 7 candles over here closing about the upper Bollinger Band, generally the trend gets pretty exhausted. And that's exactly what happened. Made a little bit of a higher high over here, but that's it for that cycle. So far, we're having some pretty healthy pullback, finding some nice grounding for you to step up a lot higher, right? So this cycle over here so far, really from around 2023, 2024, and possibly beyond, look a lot more like the cycle, not from the last cycle, but the cycle before that, where you're going to have a lot of these kinds of, closing above the upper Bollinger Band for a couple of months, and you end up going sideways over here, cooling down, allowing things to cool down so they can go down a lot higher, right? Until it doesn't, until things really start to get parabolic again. So over here, it continues to be pretty decent in terms of having a lot of correction, closing back inside of the Bollinger Band until really starts around April 2017. That's when things really start to get parabolic, and that's when the bull trend really is starting to get exhausted, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 candles closing above the upper Bollinger Band. That bull trend is exhausted. It's absolutely exhausted. So far we don't really have that problem. Like it just really hasn't been all that overheated. So I think that greed trend is still going to probably end up, pushing higher, is my guess. Just because the trend most likely will go on until the trend is exhausted, and so far there's not really any sign of exhaustion because it's doing all the necessary cool down that it needs to do, right? And then on top of that, the Bollinger Band also is going to show you a 20-month moving average. And you can see that whenever things just kind of get down or flat, and whenever things start to turn around like this, it tends to go on for quite some time, and it can lead the bull market to go on for a lot longer. So for example, right, over here, after about 6 months or so of going up, you end up having a very, very significant, huge, longer term bull trend just keeps on trending up afterwards, right? Right now, we just have the 20-month moving average just starting to curl up. This just started to happen. There's potentially a lot more room for it to go up further in terms of this bull market based on looking at just the 20-month moving average alone. Now, you cannot just rely on just one indicator, right? That's just one indicator of many that I'm going to show you. But like, look at the previous trend. Like within about 6 months or so, you still have a long runway, right? I'm not saying that this cycle is going to be like this. I'm saying maybe we're like somewhere over here, and maybe we have a little bit longer to go. But I still think that this solidifying of this bull trend has just gotten started not long ago, about half a year ago. So there could be a lot higher run rate to run after that potentially. That's just something to think about. Now, number 4, I'm going to take off the Bollinger Band here. I'm going to show you the Ichimoku cloud. With the Ichimoku cloud, you're going to see quite a few things. First of all, you're going to see the cloud, but then you're also going to see these kind of Tenkan and Kijun line, right? Tenkan line is the blue line over here. The blue line is the leading line, whereas the lagging line is the red line over here, which is called the Kijun. There's another term for that. The blue line, the Tenkan, is also called conversion, and the Kijun, the red line, is also called baseline, right? So whenever you have the baseline passing underneath the leading line, you have a bullish cross, and whenever you have this bullish cross, you just kind of backtest it to history. Whenever you have this bullish cross, usually some pretty bullish thing happens afterwards, right? We just had the bullish cross that happened back in January of 2024, and whenever this bullish cross happened last time, it went pre-parabolic afterwards, and whenever this bullish cross happened at the time before that, it went very, very bullish afterwards, right? We just had that cross not long ago, just a few months ago, and yet do I think that it's going to keep going up for like 2 years? No. I do not think that's the case, but what you're seeing here is still, potentially very favorable. Once you get this monthly Kijun Tenkan cross, bullish TK cross, if you will, usually these kind of bull trends, they keep going on for quite some time, maybe for 12 months, maybe for 18 months. Who knows for sure, but there tends to be a favorable thing that generally happens afterwards, right? So another thing too, if it breaks from bottom of the cloud to top of the cloud, generally this is beginning a potential bull trend that can last for quite some time, right? It just kind of broke above the cloud over here for a few months, and it went up for a lot longer. It kind of broke above the cloud here, back tested the cloud, and before going a lot higher, right? So I'm really seeing a lot of things that could be, quite favorable in terms of breaking above the cloud and where else it can go. Generally, it ends up going up higher, together with the fact that you just had a bullish cross as well. Right, so that's number 4. Another thing with the Ichimoku cloud, I'm going to do a completely different kind of time frame here, which is something I've talked about recently. I'm going to take off the conversion in the baseline, the Tenkan and Kijun. I'm going to do a 2-day time frame here. And on the 2-day time frame, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to show you that this 2-day cloud thing has actually really surprised me. This 2-day cloud thing has actually served as pretty important resistance and support for a very, very long time. For example, currently we're trying to test this as support, right? Over here it got really close to support and you pull back. In the past over here, you have a breakdown below that. You have a back test of this 2-day cloud. And it's finally able to break above the cloud, back test the cloud, and go up higher, right? Here at the bottom of the cloud service support. Here at the top of the cloud service support. Here at the bottom of the cloud service resistance here during the bear market. Here at the bottom of the cloud against service resistance over here. And up here, the cloud here also against service resistance, right? I can back test it a little bit further. Here, cloud service resistance. So that's the almost the entire bear market right there. Over here is service support before it got exhausted and dropped down. Once you drop down the 2-day cloud, that's when things really have started to plummet. And if you just kind of backtrack this, what happened here on the last bull cycle? The last bull cycle, you really haven't touched the 2-day cloud for a very long time. And when you have something like this, you don't have like a solid ground footing to kind of push things up a lot higher. It's really easy for things to get exhausted. Here, it is able to kind of backtest it a little bit here, and you're able to have a big bounce, but the bounce just kind of went way too far, way too fast. And whenever it bounced down, it just bounced down pretty hard, right? The cycle currently that we're in right now don't have that problem because we're actually just bouncing along the 2-day cloud on the way up. And this is going to be a lot more safer way, a lot more solid grounding for things to kind of go up, if you will, right? So that's kind of what I'm seeing here in terms of the 2-day cloud. I'm going to show you the fifth thing where I think is showing you that we haven't topped yet, because again, right now all it's doing right now is just kind of backtesting the cloud, right? On the top of the cloud, there's not really any trend of any signs for any longer term trend exhaustion or anything like that. And most likely, as support, I'm still gonna favor the fact that it's probably gonna go up a lot higher. And there's no reason to think this trend has like way overextended, way overexhausted, or anything like that, just based on the look, right? Same thing. You look at the bull market support band; these actually correlate very, very closely. Although I think that the 2-day Ichimoku cloud is actually a little bit more precise. But the bull market support band is showing the same thing. Like it's basically got close to over here. It bounced from here for the most part. I'm going to do a weekly chart. It's going to show you a lot better. It bounced from this bull market support band over here, right? And it's basically also around here, but it's bouncing up. So bull market support band here serves as support for bull market. Unless you have a breakdown of the bull market support band over here, that's when you're really in trouble. So far, there's really no sign that it's happening. If it does end up doing that and end up back testing it and end up failing, kind of like it did over here, that's when you'd really know that like the true top is in, right? But so far, there's not really any sign that it's doing that. All it's doing right now is just kind of basically jumping up and doing a little back test before going up higher. So I'm not really sure whether or not there's any significant concern that I'm really kind of seeing here so far for me to want to call a top. There are no signs of it based on the bull market support band. We're simply just kind of testing the bull market support band, which is rising still, by the way. That's support, right? So that's number 5. Number 6, I'm going to pull up the monthly chart here. I'm going to pull up this indicator here that's available in TradingView. Actually, there are multiple versions of this, but this is called the MVRVZ score. You just click on that, and that one thing here is going to open. And what you're going to see here, I'm going to pull up the chart of Bitcoin over here. What you're going to see here is whenever the score got up to around like the 4s and 5s, that's when you know you've topped, right? And whenever a score get really close to 0, that's when you like really know that it's really kind of getting close to the bottom over here. What you're really seeing here is you're right now the score is like went up to like maybe like a 3 and went back down to maybe like a 2, right? So we're still quite far away from like the 5s, whenever it is that when it starts to top. We're still quite a ways away from that. And sometimes it can take some time to kind of get up there. And even if you get up there, things can kind of linger up there for a lot longer and push the price even up a lot higher for time, right? So just because we get there doesn't necessarily mean that we've topped. And right now we're not even anywhere near that 5 number. So this has served as a pretty good indicator over the last few cycles. Number 7 is a little bit tougher to kind of pull up. I'm going to try my best here. Number 7 is the pi cycle indicator. If you look at, I like the one by Shark Tank. What you're really seeing here is this has been devised in 2019. So this really was designed in 2019 to try to backtest the previous cycle high using a two different moving averages. Actually, one is a derivative of a moving average, the other one's an actual moving average. And you can just find a pi cycle indicator over here, 350, 111. What you're really seeing here is whenever these two cross, that's when you have a top of Bitcoin, right? So you see that there's a cross right there that happened that signified this top right here. There's another cross over here that happened to signify that top right there. And there's also another cross that happened here to signify a cross right here. Now, granted, this test over here didn't really get designed until 2019, right? So this is really back testing, looking at different moving average and different derivatives to trying to figure out what a top could be and see whether or not it could apply to the cycle after that. Now, the cross happened over here, which is pretty good. The cross happened around April of 2021, which signified this top right here. So technically, this could be the cycle top, although it did go up and form like a slightly higher high after that. But this is like a little bit more exhaustive top. So a lot of people actually believe that this is the true Bitcoin top from the last cycle is around April. And it correctly, accurately calculated that right there, which is kind of amazing. Right now, we're nowhere near the cross. We're nowhere near the cross. And if you look over here, like the cross can go on and it can kind of keep you in suspense. Oh, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Didn't happen up until here, right? So if you believe in this indicator, then whenever these two cross, that would be a perfect time to take profit if you believe in the pi cycle indicator. Again, this is just back tested once, and it's only been like validated once over here. And it's not the highest high of the cycle. The highest high is over here in November, but it's still a pretty good indicator in terms of calling for a top during the last cycle. So that's number 7. And I think this is something that's very, very good to have a tool box for you to look at because it has served as pretty good from last cycle. Number 8. Number 8 is going to be a little bit more challenging. Number 8 is this. It's really Bitcoin dominance. Really talking about altcoin seasons, talking about liquidity flowing away from Bitcoin to pump other things. This hasn't really even happened yet. What generally happens after halving is, or before halving, you have a run up of Bitcoin, and then it just get a little bit weak, and it gets into halving. Sometimes getting halving, the last 2 cycles, you really have a lot of significant outflow of funds from Bitcoin going into altcoins because Bitcoin dominance, which is what you're showing over here in this chart. If the chart up here is high, that means that Bitcoin has a lot of strength. If the chart down is like all the way plummet down here, it means that Bitcoin is not very strong compared to all the other altcoins, right? So for the last 2 cycles, whenever halving happens, you have this big giant drop of Bitcoin dominance. Basically, funds are flowing out of Bitcoin and go into various altcoins. It starts to pump a lot of these crazy altcoins. You have these astronomical gains for all these altcoins during altcoin season. After halving, until the Bitcoin top for both of those last 2 cycles. When you hit the Bitcoin top, generally that's when the party ends and Bitcoin dominance would go up again. And alts, as Bitcoin goes down, alts would bleed against Bitcoin to go down even more. And that's just kind of what happens over the last few cycles. Now, generally that's what happens, right? Bitcoin, whenever it starts pumping pre-halving, Bitcoin would go up. But after halving, generally Bitcoin starts to kind of bleed out a little bit to the other altcoins over here. And eventually they would flow back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin would pump higher, and it would flow back up and becomes a whole cycle over here as more and more fiat money comes in because everybody's seeing, hey, how high this thing is pumping, right? So everybody really starts talking about Bitcoin, crypto, things like that. That hasn't really even started. And I think that right now we have just gone through the halving. There's a possibility that we might end up seeing a pretty interesting altcoin season that could be coming up soon if the cycle is playing out just like it did last time. Right? This hasn't happened, so that's why I don't think that things are really anywhere near their euphoria for you to really get worried about Bitcoin topping because there are a lot of things that hasn't really happened yet. I believe the market makers are greedy. The whales are greedy. They're going to end up pumping things a lot higher whenever they can. They've been accumulating for like the last 2 years, and I don't think they're just going to let some things sit. I think they're just going to get everybody bored over the last couple of years, and they're going to bring us some pretty strong excitement coming up soon. And they have the market, they have the liquidity to do it now. And I'll show you why I say that. But the Bitcoin dominance is reason number 8. Reason number 9 is a little bit more abstract, but it really has to do with more liquidity flow. The reason number 9, I would say, if you look at the Hang Seng Index, if you look at the relative tops, like there are a few tops over here that's pretty important, right? Around 2021, generally 2018, September 2014, like these kind of tops over here. I guess, I mean, maybe a little bit earlier. But if you kind of align these tops and see if this works for me here. If you kind of align these tops, they also serve as pretty decent tops over here for Bitcoin. Like a lot of times, if you just look at Bitcoin, a lot of people think that Bitcoin pumps because post-halving, supply and demand kind of thing. I also think that a big part of it is also has to do with Chinese liquidity. Whenever Chinese liquidity increases, a lot of this end up going to outflow from China and going to Bitcoin. And that's kind of what I'm seeing pretty much every single cycle. There is a potential where the Hang Sengs kind of end up doing pretty well over here. It does look like a very clean kind of Adam and potential Eve pattern over here. You have 4 straight green candles monthly. It really looks like there's a potential for the Chinese market to maybe have at least like a local bottom, right? It doesn't have to be a very strong uptrend. I mean, again, over here, like it didn't really go up that high. Over here, it made a little bit of a lower high, right? But Bitcoin also kept on just kind of going up. So I think there's a lot of potential room if Chinese government continue to pump money into the system, and that's going to end up bleeding into global liquidity. That's end up going into, Bitcoin. I think there is a potential that Bitcoin would, continue to go up a lot higher. So that's one thought. The other thought would be also this has a lot to do with global liquidity too, because you're not just really looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin actually looks all very, very cycle dependent because it looks very, very similar to. It really looks very, very similar to IWM. The way it's lining up is not very good, but trust me, the top over here, relative tops over here, are very, very similar to the tops of IWM. Like these are very, very correlated areas in terms of where things have topped. IWM is very cyclical, is very cycle dependent, and so is Bitcoin. And generally, their tops and bottoms are very, very much, similar. I was showing you for many, many different videos to show you that I think IWM could be running pretty soon because they all run into different cycles. And I was showing you in terms of Bollinger Band. I was showing you in terms of Ichimoku Cloud. I was also showing you in terms of well fund flow, a lot of different metrics. I do think that there's a good chance that small caps may end up, run, getting a pretty strong parabolic run up here pretty soon, maybe over the next 12 to 18 months. And because of that, I think there's going to be a lot of global liquidity that's being reflected on IWM as well as in the Hang Seng Index. So I think that it's unlikely, as far as I'm concerned, that Bitcoin has stopped because there's still a lot of liquidity that could potentially flow in. All right, so that was the top 10 reasons as to why I think that Bitcoin hasn't topped yet. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.